Hello and welcome to the MyHeritage webinar series. I'm Jeff Rasmussen, your host, broadcasting to you live from Middleton, Idaho. Today we have Michelle Leonard, who is live in Glasgow, Scotland, for her class, How to Use MyHeritage DNA Results to Enhance Your Family Tree. I'm very excited to have more than 1,800 of you from 38 countries with us. You have registered for the live webinar, so wherever and whenever you are, glad to have you with us. There's still time to use both the MyHeritage Photo Enhancer and MyHeritage in Color for free. Normally, these tools can be used by non-subscribers on up to 10 photos each, while users with a complete plan enjoy unlimited use. But now through September 10th, anyone can enhance and colorize as many photos as they would like for free. So watch today's webinar and then head up to MyHeritage with your digital photos. I'd now like to introduce today's speaker, Michelle Leonard. Michelle is a Scottish professional genealogist, DNA detective, freelance researcher, speaker, author, and historian. She runs her own genealogy and DNA consultancy business, Genes and Genealogy, and specializes in DNA detective work, particularly the solving of adoption, unknown parentage, and all manner of unknown ancestor mysteries using a combination of DNA expertise and conventional research methods. She holds an M.A. in English and Modern History from the University of St. Andrews and a P.G. Cert in Genealogical Paleographic, that's a hard word for me, and Heraldic Studies from the University of Strathclyde. Please put together your virtual hands and let's give Michelle Leonard a nice warm webinar welcome. Hi, Michelle, and welcome to the webinar.
Hi, Jeff. Good to be here.
It's always good to have you here with us, and yeah, we've got lots of people from, it was fun to see people from everywhere here. Well, looking forward to this topic and our speaker. So, Michelle Leonard, and it looks great, and the time's all yours.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Well, hi, everyone. So today I'm going to be talking to you about how to use MyHeritage DNA results to enhance your family tree. Now, this is a beginner to intermediate session, so we're going to go over a lot of beginner stuff. We're going to talk about what kind of test MyHeritage offers, a little bit about the basics of DNA inheritance, how to set yourself up to succeed on MyHeritage. I'm going to go through a step-by-step guide to MyHeritage's DNA features. I'm going to give you my top hints and tips on how to get the most out of your MyHeritage DNA results. There's going to be a short overview of MyHeritage DNA tools as well. And I'm going to do all this through the prism of some case studies and success stories along the way. So what can you use DNA testing for? Well, confirming and supporting your family tree research, identifying and connecting with new and old cousins, adding new branches to family trees, breaking brick walls, solving adoption, unknown parentage, and all manner of unknown ancestor mysteries, testing theories about relationships, surname studies, and learning about your ethnic makeup. And you'll notice I put that last, and that's for a reason. So my regular disclaimer: be prepared and prepare others. DNA testing can throw up shocks and surprises, and you need to understand that's a possibility before you test or you ask others to test for you. You may find that close known ancestors are not your genetic ancestors, such as a father or grandfather, or you may find that you have close genetic relatives you never previously knew existed. So just be aware that these things can happen before you test. So what kind of DNA test does MyHeritage offer? Well, it is an autosomal DNA test, and it is a cheek swab test, which can be helpful if you have trouble producing saliva as well. What is autosomal DNA then, you may ask? Well, it's a random blend of DNA passed down to you by all of your direct ancestors. So it's a real mix of your ancestry. It covers all your ancestral lines and not just one, like some other DNA. Y chromosome DNA and mitochondrial DNA cover just one line of your tree. Each new generation with autosomal DNA, recombination takes place and some DNA from previous generations drops off. This means you've got less of your grandparents than you have of your parents, and so on. And it limits the reach of autosomal DNA to around 200 to 250 years, although you will have matches a bit further back than that at times. And it's best, therefore, for matching with cousins within the past 5 to 7 generations. Autosomal tests are non-gender specific, so both men and women can take them, and people could match you on any of your ancestral lines. The larger the DNA segment you share with a match, the closer that match is going to be, and the more DNA segments shared, the closer the match will be as well. It's important to test older generations if you possibly can, due to the limited reach of autosomal DNA, and as many other close and confirmed relatives as you can will help narrow matches down. Autosomal DNA testing has exploded in recent years, and MyHeritage has been at the forefront and now has over 4 million people in their database. So how is autosomal DNA inherited? This is important to understand. In the nucleus of every human cell, there are 46 chromosomes. These are the building blocks of our DNA. And there are 23 pairs overall. That's what they break down into. And I'm going to emphasize the fact that they come in pairs because it's a very important concept to get your head around. We each have 22 pairs of autosomes or autosomal chromosomes, hence the name of the test, and 1 pair of sex or gender defining chromosomes. And that's the X and the Y. If you get 2 X's, you're female. If you get an X and a Y, the Y coming from your father, then you're male. And this is what they look like. As you can see, there they are in their pairs. And chromosome 1 is the largest, and they get progressively smaller as the numbers increase, with chromosome 21 actually being the smallest, followed by chromosome 22. MyHeritage tests don't report on the X chromosome, and Y chromosome tests are completely separate. So how does this all work? Well, here's mum and dad. Here's you. Dad's got his 22 pairs of autosomes and his 1 pair of sex chromosomes. He's got the X and the Y because he's male. Here's mum. She's got her 22 pairs of autosomes and 1 pair of sex chromosomes. She's got the 2 X's since she's female. Recombination takes place. Dad passes down 1 set of 22 new autosomes. That's half of his 44, all jumbled up together, and his unchanged X chromosome, because he only has 1 to pass down. And mum does the same. She passes down a new set of 22 autosomes, half of her 44 mixed together, and 1 X chromosome, which is generally going to be a mix of her 2. Occasionally, it may be one of them unchanged. Mix of DNA of your own, 22 pairs of autosomes and 2 X chromosomes, of course, X and Y if you're male. You inherit progressively less DNA from your ancestors with each passing generation. 50% parents, around 25% grandparents, around 12.5% great-grandparents. You can see it halves each generation we go back in time. So it's important to familiarize yourself with the amounts of DNA different relationships should share with each other on average. But this kind of DNA inheritance is random, so it's best to think in ranges and not absolutes. And outliers are always possible, and these are matches who share much lower or higher than the average. So let's look at a range of sharing percentages. 50% with a parent-child, around 50% with a full sibling, around 25% with a half-sibling, grandparent, aunt, uncle, double first cousin, 12.5% first cousin, half-aunt, grandniece. You can see that there are a lot of different relationships that might share around about the same amount of DNA with you. And that means that we have to look at other avenues in order to discern which of these relationships it is. The only absolute is you share 50% with each parent. All the rest are approximate. You might inherit 22% from one grandparent and 28% from the other. It's really all down to how the cards fall during that recombination process. The other thing you need to understand when looking at DNA matching is centimorgans. Now, you only need to understand basics about this. You don't need to get into lots and lots of science. A centimorgan is a unit for measuring genetic linkage. It's usually abbreviated to a small c and a large M. And the thing you need to remember about CMs is the larger the number you share with a match, the closer the relationship. That's it. That's really it. You should think in ranges though. So how do we do that? Well, first of all, let's look at the averages. 3,500 between a parent and a child. 1,780 for a half sibling or a grandparent or an aunt or a niece. 450 for a first cousin once removed or a half first cousin or a half grandaunt. 120 for a second cousin once removed or a half second cousin. Again, you can see how it goes down very, very quickly as the relationships go further out. But as I say, think in ranges, and the best resource for this is the Shared Centimorgan project run by Dr. Blaine Bettinger. It's a fantastic resource for helping with relationship predictions. Over 60,000 people have submitted their own data for matches. If we look at just one of them, it tells us the average, 1759 centimorgans is the average, 1,160 to 2,436 is the range. So it's a really, really large range that we're looking at. My major tip with this, however, is be very wary of confirmation bias. If you see a match who is sharing at either end, either extreme of a range, don't immediately just accept that the relationship must be correct, because the probabilities would suggest that it's not. Always investigate other possibilities for that range, for that being at that edge of that range. Okay, so let's get into the nitty-gritty here. How do you set yourself up to succeed at MyHeritage? First of all, and this is the same for anything, build your own tree out far and wide and deep. You want to have as robust a tree as you possibly can. So get your direct ancestors first, back as far as you can take them, but don't neglect your collateral lines. That's the lines of the siblings of your direct ancestors. Those are extremely important for DNA matching, because at the end of the day, the people that are going to show up in your match list are generally going to be the descendants of these collateral lines. You want to make the tools and features on MyHeritage work for you. And to do that, create or upload a family tree, and you'll get things like theory of family relativity hints, smart matches, and shared ancestral surnames highlighted for you. And I'm going to go over all of these through the webinar. So let's say you're starting from complete scratch. You don't have a tree yet. What you want to do is, on your homepage, just click My Family Tree, and it will give you a prompt to create a family tree, or you can import a GEDCOM if you've created a family tree elsewhere on other software. If you know anything at all, please do this, because you're going to be helping yourself and you'll help your DNA matches as well. The next key point is you have to correctly link your DNA results to your tree at MyHeritage to get the most out of it. So here I'm using a screenshot of when you upload a DNA test to MyHeritage, but you'll see something similar if you activate a kit as well. If you are uploading your own DNA, you want to say mine. And when you do that, the system allocates that DNA to the account holder, to the root individual of your family tree. So if you've started your family tree with your spouse or someone other than yourself, you might end up with a mistake in linking your results to your tree. So be careful of that. If you're uploading someone else's DNA, when you click someone else and you start to put their name in, the system will look for that person in your default tree, or actually across all of your trees. If it finds someone with that name, it will highlight it for you, and you want to click on that highlighted name so long as it is the correct person. If you're not sure about your root individual, then you can go to your settings, go to the homepage settings, click on Other, and you can specify the root individual in your tree from there. So let's say I make a mistake. This is my cousin Agnes. She's in my tree. I've got a full set of ancestors for her attached. All good. Agnes takes a test, and I'm uploading her to MyHeritage. Now, Agnes's maiden name is Davis, but her married name is Cooper. So I decide to add her as Agnes Cooper for her DNA test. But I've been a bit lazy and I haven't added her husband to my tree. So she's not in my tree as Agnes Cooper. So the system doesn't find her. So what will happen when I upload this is it will create a new person. This new Agnes Cooper will go in my tree on her own while I've got Agnes Davis on my tree with all the ancestors. And so the DNA will be linked to Agnes Cooper, but it won't be helpful because it doesn't have any ancestors. So what I want to do is either add her husband or I want to add her as Agnes Davis when the system can find her in my tree. However, sometimes some people might end up with the same person in their tree twice because they may not be sure about click on the little cross instead, which takes that away and will instead add a new Agnes Davis to the tree. Like here. So now I've done this and I've ended up with this second Agnes Davis with a little DNA symbol attached. She's got no parents. She's all on her lonesome and she is who the DNA is attached to. And when I search my tree, I find I have two Agnes Davis. One says that it's my cousin, and that's because that's the one that's correctly attached to the ancestors. The other is the one that I've just added via uploading the DNA erroneously. So how can I fix this? Well, I could connect the Agnes Davis with the DNA attached to her ancestors. I could connect her to an existing person on the tree, her father and her mother. But then I'm going to end up with two Agnes Davis children of those parents. So I want to delete the original one at this point. Or I could go to Manage DNA Kits and I could reassign the kit to the original Agnes Davis and delete the new one instead, either or. Just make the system work for you by correctly linking your tree to your results. It's an important step. And you'll see when we look at some of the things later on, how when people get it wrong, it can make it difficult to find what you're looking for. So, autosomal DNA test results consist of two main components, an ethnicity estimate and a DNA match list. So let's look at both, starting with the ethnicity estimate, also known as admixture. This is my MyHeritage ethnicity estimate, 100% European, 70% North and West Europe, Irish, Scottish, Welsh, English, etc. There's all these different percentages that it gives me. It's interesting. I always like to look at an ethnicity estimate, but is it really going to help me enhance my family tree at this point? Probably not. I also get a nice map showing the concentrations of my ethnicity. And I always encourage people to play the intro video, which is always a bit of fun to watch when you first get your results. So ethnicity estimates will vary between companies because they have different reference populations and algorithms, and they're most accurate to the continental level. Don't take them too literally. There will be errors, but they can give you a broad idea of your origins, and they might provide genealogical clues, say if you were adopted or have a recent unknown ancestor mystery and you don't know what your ethnicity really should be. This is an emerging science though, and it's going to improve over time as more people test and reference populations increase. And in fact, MyHeritage are working away on a big update, which will be coming very soon and will have many, many more sub-regions. So look out for that. So let's move on to the thing that is the most important aspect of a DNA test for family history, and that's the DNA match list. I say it's all about the cousins, and it really, really is if you want to use this for your family tree. So a few initial tips: start with your largest matches, work your way down your list, use DNA in conjunction with traditional research. That's how to get the most out of it. Study the shared matches because they could hold vital clues, especially if you've got mysteries to solve. And search your match lists for common surnames, common locations. If a match has both, you've got a better chance of identifying that link. And be proactive. Contact your matches. Try to make connections. Many won't respond, but keep trying and you will find new cousins to collaborate with. Okay, so this is my MyHeritage DNA match list. There's lots of information there to break down. First of all, if you have a number of people tested and on the same account, it's very, very easy to toggle between the different tests via select another person. So let's look closer at it. It's telling me that I have nearly 15,000 DNA matches. So that's a lot of DNA matches to work through. I'm probably not going to be able to look at all of them in detail, so I really need to prioritize what I'm going to look at. There's also filters and sorting and searching capabilities, and we're going to go through them in detail. So let's scroll down my match list a little bit and have a look at some of the smaller matches. When we look at the top of my match list, we'll see it's all people I've tested myself, my mum, my siblings, etc. So I have to scroll down to find matches that I'm going to work on. One of the great things about the MyHeritage match list is if the person has put this information in and given consent for it to be shown, you'll get their age and you'll get their country. And that can be really, really helpful at times. So here we've got a match, Marie. She's in her 60s. She's from Great Britain. You also get an estimated relationship. So it says third to fifth cousin here. And that's quite broad. It could be anything within there, any removed, any half relationship, etc. If you click on the little question mark, you get more detail. And I'll show you that in a bit. Then we get DNA match quality. And this is where it tells you how much DNA you share with your match. So this is the important bit, really, about how close your match could be. So the shared DNA, it's given in a percentage and in centimorgans. So 0.7% is 51.3 centimorgans. It also tells you how many segments that breaks down into. 4 segments in this case, and the largest segment is 24.7 centimorgans. Largest segment can be a really important thing to look at, because if you end up with a very small largest segment, then the match might not be as useful to find common ancestors as if you see a much larger largest segment. For instance, here's a largest segment of 49.5. That would instantly pop out the screen at me as one that I would want to investigate before I would want to investigate this one with a largest segment of 9.4. And then that one, in fact, happens to be someone who matches me on both my paternal and maternal sides on a number of very small segments. So the matches, the common ancestors, are very likely to be much further back in time. The other thing that the DNA match list page gives you is it tells you if there's a family tree and even how many people are in it and who manages the family tree and who manages the DNA. Sometimes the DNA is managed by someone other than the tester, like in the top one there. Crosby is managed by Marjorie. So the next thing you want to do when you're looking at the DNA match list is to go to the Review DNA Match page, and there is a plethora of information to get through there as well. I'm just going to give you a quick overview of it here. So you'll notice when you're on the Review DNA Match, which I also call the Individual Match page, that as you scroll down, you'll see lots of different sections with lots and lots of information. So I'm just going to break that down. The first section is a kind of review overview of what you've already seen on the main match page. Then you'll get a section on ancestral surnames. You'll get the shared match list, which is the most key of tools. Then you get pedigree charts, then shared ethnicities, and finally at the very bottom, you get the one-to-one chromosome browser. And we're going to delve into all of these, but we're going to do it through a case study, a confirming lines on your tree case study. So this is my tree, And I have been able to confirm all 8 of my great-grandparents, even all 16 of my great-great-grandparents, through my paper trail and my DNA. The fact that I have spent so many years building a tree to find evidence that I inherited pieces of DNA from all of these different people that I have been researching is priceless evidence for my tree. Now, of course, sometimes you'll find that you can't find DNA for certain lines, and that's because there are genetic oopses or misattributed parentage events. But in my case, I have been able to find that evidence. And like I say, I find that priceless. So, key tip, work with your highest matches. The likelihood that you and your match share a common ancestor within 6 generations, that's 4th great-grandparents, with a shared segment of 30 centimorgans or higher is 90%. Those are really good odds, and I like to take those odds. However, if you're going to work on matches that are just 6 to 12 centimorgans, it's 5%. Those aren't so good odds. So start at the top of your match list and work your way down it. So we're going to use my mum's match list here on MyHeritage, and that's a key point too. If you have parents tested, then work with their match lists because they have more DNA from our ancestors than we do, and they're going to match the matches better and are going to have more matches on those lines. So this is a match on my mum's list, Odette Smith. She's in her 60s, she's in the USA, she's got a family tree with 16 people, and the estimated relationship is 3rd to 5th cousin. And if we click on that little question mark, like I said earlier, it gives us a lot of different options between the 3rd to 5th cousin range. It even highlights them on a nice little tree. You can also go to the Shared CM Project tool on the DNA Painter website and see the probabilities and even more relationships for that 58 centimorgans of DNA that is shared. And it's interesting to see that it's only in one segment, 58 centimorgans over one segment. So it's one really large segment of DNA. So we're going to look at this review DNA match page now, and we're going to go through it in detail. As I said, the top bit is just an overview of everything we've seen on the main match list. It's not going to tell us anything new there. So we'll cycle down to the next area, and that is ancestral surnames. If you and your match have both uploaded and linked to tree correctly, like we've talked about, then the system will work for you. It will find any surnames you have in common on your trees. In this case, it says Mary and Odette, Mary, my mother, and Odette, the match, do not share any ancestral surnames. And Odette only has the one ancestral surname, Smith, and that is her surname currently, which could be a married name. So that's a bit of a red flag, considering she has apparently 16 people in her tree, yet she only has one surname. So the next section down the review page is the shared match list. And I cannot overemphasize how important the shared match list is. It is the key tool that you will return to time and time again to try and work out connections with your matches. And MyHeritage's shared match list is fantastic. It is full of detail. It tells you both what the tester, so in this case, Mary, my mum, and the comparison match, in this case, Odette Smith, share with each of the shared matches who are in the middle of the screen. So the top two are me and my brother. So we are redundant in this situation because my mother is tested, so we bypass us. We want to look further down the list. And one of my top tips here is on the right-hand side, the comparison match side. As you scroll down the list, look for anyone who's sharing a larger amount of centimorgans with the comparison match, a really decent amount, because if you can find someone who's sharing quite a lot with the comparison match, it should be easier to find common ancestors between those two people. So for instance, here we've got this Vittorio D'Angelo, and he's only sharing 24 centimorgans with my mum, but 164 centimorgans with Odette. That's definitely worth investigating. Now, Vittorio's tree wasn't especially good to begin with, and I couldn't work him out before I worked Odette out. But it's still a key point to say always try to do that. Now, cycling further down the list, I found a Mario D'Angelo sharing 96 centimorgans, and he just happens to be the son of Vittorio. By going through to Mario's shared match list with my mum, I was able to find out that information from there, and it can be really important to find out things like that. Also, I found another match further down the list, Nina Richards, and she is the opposite way around. She's sharing much more with my mum, 112 centimorgans compared to 37 with Odette. And the reason that she is a key match is because I know who she is. I've already worked her out before. And that is the most important thing you're looking for as you look down that shared match list. Can I see anyone I've already identified? Is there anyone there I know who the common ancestors are with? And I do know that with Nina. Therefore, the common ancestors with her could well be the same common ancestors I need to be looking at for Odette. So build out your tree, as I said, direct ancestors and collateral lines. And that's what I've done. I've built out my tree. This is my mum's paternal tree, and we're going to concentrate on her second great-grandparents, James Colquhoun and Mary Mitchell. And here is Nina, who is on my tree, one of my collateral lines, who I have worked on before, and she also descends from James Colquhoun and Mary Mitchell. They're her great-grandparents. They're my mum's great-great-grandparents. Therefore, Nina and my mum are second cousins once removed. So let's go back to the DNA review page. Now that I've got a clue as to where on my tree I might need to look for the match, I want to look at Odette's tree. And the next section down in the DNA review page is pedigree charts, which is the pedigree tree of Odette, her direct ancestors. However, it doesn't give me much, does it? It tells me the year she was born, so that's new information, but it has private for her mother, and absolutely nothing for her father or grandparents. However, like I said, there's apparently 16 people in this tree. So where are all the missing people? Perhaps they're related to her husband who's on the tree, and perhaps they won't be any help with Odette, but we have to make sure of that. So let's go to the next section of the DNA review page first, the shared ethnicities. And this will point out if you have any shared ethnicity with your match. So it's pointing out that my mum and Odette shared Irish-Scottish ethnicity, and that's really what I'm looking for anyway, so I would suggest that that's pretty accurate. And the final thing on the DNA review page is the one-to-one chromosome browser. Now, I'm not going to talk much about this here because I'm going to have a little section on chromosome browsers later, but it just shows that one big 58 centimorgan segment on chromosome 6. So let's scroll back up to the top of the page, and we want to view this tree with these 16 people to see who else might be in there. And it takes us to what is probably the home person, probably Odette's husband, Private Smith, who has a father, Private Smith. So that's not terribly useful either. There are a number of different ways you can look at a tree on MyHeritage though. There's the family view, which will allow you to see all of the siblings, the children, etc. Pedigree view, which I favour when trying to work out common ancestors with a DNA match. And this snazzy new fan chart, which I'm going to digress for a second and show you mine. If you haven't done this yet on MyHeritage, I highly recommend it. It's a lovely little chart of your ancestry in a fan chart circle. But I digress, let's go back. And then there's list view, which is what I'm going to use here. But there's one more clue on this page by clicking through to view the tree that I've got, and that's that the tree is called the Melia family tree. I didn't get that anywhere else yet, so there's another surname to add in the mix, Melia. So let's look at this list view, and this is going to list all 16 people in the tree, and most of them are Hawaiian. Now, my mother's ancestry is Scottish with a little bit of Irish, so I'm only looking for Scottish and Irish, and actually, due to the match with Nina, I'm looking for Colquhouns or Mitchells. But what I find is one Scottish name, John Bonar Robertson. That stands out amidst all the Hawaiian. And also this private Melia, born Robertson. That suggests that it's a woman who has married a Melia. So I had a look at the pedigree for her, and again, that gives me nothing. There's no ancestors attached. So the next thing I always suggest people do is always check the profile and the family site of the match. So click on Odette Smith's name and you'll get the opportunity to go to the Smith website. That's what it's called, Smith website. And of course, we have the standard MyHeritage blurb here. My name is Odette Smith. I started this site, etc. But it does give me something new. It gives me a photograph of Odette and her husband. Now, of course, I've blanked that out, but it's an interesting thing to find. I also like to look at this side. I could request membership. I could send a message to Odette. I could look to see if there are any more photographs. And I could view the family tree from the family site. And I always have a go at that as well. And when I click on the family tree from the family site, it gives me a different view again. There's this private married couple, but only one of them has parents attached. So I want to look at that. And when I put it into pedigree view, I find that it's Private Robertson, the daughter of John Bonar Robertson. And when we look at the details, this Private Robertson married the Private Melia. So we do have a female Robertson marrying a male Melia, and John Bonar Robertson is the father. So what do I do now? Well, this is the point at which I need to go back to the records. I have to combine the DNA and traditional research. That is the way to be successful with using your DNA matches for your family tree. So, just like you want to build out your own tree as best you can, build out the trees of your matches. You just need a starting point, and I've got one here with John Bonar Robertson. Many matches will have very small trees, private trees, no tree at all. Trees are vital for identifying connections, so don't bypass those without developed trees. And don't just accept the tree is too small to find the link. This is a very small tree that I'm looking at. You've got to be proactive and build it out yourself. Odette's tree has this one Scottish name. I'm going to gamble that it is the connection, and I'm going to go back to the traditional research and build out John Bonar Robertson's tree in the hopes of finding a connection to my Colquhoun or my Mitchell lines, the common ancestors my mum has with Nina. So I can start this research on MyHeritage. Search the records, search the family trees. And in one of the family trees, I find John Bonar Robertson. He's born in 1896. I confirm that with Scottish records. And it tells me that his parents were James Robertson and Mary Jean Bonar. And when I look at this Mary Jean Bonar on this tree, I find even that there's a little photograph of her, and that she was born in 1872 in Hamilton in Lanarkshire, where many of my maternal lines come from, including my Colquhouns and Mitchells. They ended up in Hamilton. So we have a common location here now as well. And her parents were, drum roll, James Bonar and Rose Ann Colquhoun. So bingo, there we go. That's the connection I was looking for. That's the name I was looking for. And when I build out John Bonar Robertson's tree, there, John Colquhoun and Margaret Walker are his great-grandparents. They're my fourth great-grandparents. And when I look at my maternal grandfather's tree, there they are, John Colquhoun and Margaret Walker. I descend from their son, James, while Odette descends from their daughter, Roseanne. But I'm still not quite sure how Odette fits in at this point. I've worked out the connection to John Bonar Robertson, but how do we get forward to her? Well, let's search for obituaries. We have this information. We have the Robertson name, the Melia name, the Smith name. Let's see if we can find something. And indeed, I found John Bonar Robertson's daughter, Jenny, born in 1929, married Harold Melia. So she is Private Robertson, even though she has now passed away, and 4 children, James, Jonathan, Odette, and Craig. So finally, I know who Odette is, how she fits in, how I'm related to her, and I have finally got a tree for her. There's John Colquhoun and Margaret Walker. They're her third great-grandparents. They're also my mum's third great-grandparents. So Odette and my mum are fourth cousins exactly, and she's my fourth cousin once removed. So let's move on now to sorting, searching, and filtering. And for this, we're going to go back to the main match page. So let's start with sort by. When you click on that, you can sort by shared DNA, shared segments, largest segment, full name, and most recent. You might want to try most recent to see your newest matches. I usually use shared DNA or largest segment. For instance, you might have a lot of matches who all share between 30 and 80 centimorgans with you. You want to work on the ones with the largest segments first, and by sorting and by largest segment, you'll get that. Next, there's the search box, and you can search by name of match or ancestral surname. So here I'm searching my ancestral surname of Laird. And down the list, I find this match Rita. Now, she's not a high match, 18 centimorgans, but I'm interested in her because she has not just the Laird surname, but also Borroman. And my Laird and Borroman lines are very intertwined. So since she has both names, I want to investigate this. When you look at the pedigree chart on the review DNA page, it only goes up to 5 generations or second great grandparents. So it only goes up to her second great grandparent, Agnes Easton. And Easton is another name associated with my Lairds and Borromans. So I'm very interested in this for the link. So I need to look at the full tree again, and I find that Agnes's parents were Alexander Easton and Agnes Borroman, and straight away I see the connection, John Borroman and Jean Love, my ancestors. If we look at my third great-grandfather, John Laird, there they are, his great-grandparents, John Borroman and Jean Love. So the connection has been identified very, very quickly with a little bit of searching for a more obscure surname. So let's move on to filtering. And there are many filters to choose from, and you can have a number of different ones across the filters as well. On the all tree details, you can have all details, theory of family relativity, smart matches, shared surnames, shared places, and has family tree. Now, I'm very reluctant to recommend has family tree because I don't want to filter out the matches with no tree. They could be some of my best matches, and maybe if I contact them, they'll be responsive, or maybe I'll be able to work out who they are from the information given. So don't bypass the ones with no tree. You can filter by relationship and location. Let's say you're in Australia and you want to see your Australian matches. You can do that. You can also filter by ethnicity. Let's say you're a quarter Scandinavian. You want to see just your Scandinavian shared ethnicity matches. You can do that. And as I say, you can mix and match these filters across the 4 different filter columns. So a key tip, pick off the low-hanging fruit. Make the system work for you and get the most out of it. Let's start with theory of family relativity. We're going to filter and just see the matches that have a theory of family relativity hint. So that's a genealogical theory crafted by connecting billions of family tree profiles and historical records on MyHeritage, and it suggests how DNA matches may be related to each other. So let's see it in action. I've filtered and I've found this match, and it says the theory is that G is my mum's third cousin. So I want to view that theory. So let's view it. And it's telling me that my mum's second great-grandparents, James Cleland and Mary Hamilton, are also G's second great-grandparents. Now, the key important thing here is that you have to substantiate this. Don't just accept it as the truth. You have to investigate it and make sure it's correct. It's not a fact, it's a clue. Now, in this case, it's entirely correct. I know for a fact that G is my mum's third cousin, and I have the documentation to prove that. However, this one is different. Here's my third great-grandmother, Jane Jameson, and this theory is suggesting that she was married to both my third great-grandfather, James McMaster, and a man named David Gawley at exactly the same time, having children in exactly the same years. It's simply not possible. So there are 2 Jane Jamesons, and it's understandable why the system has hit upon this woman with the same name and similar dates, but they're not the same person. And this is an incorrect theory of family relativity hint. So I need to dismiss it after investigating it. So treat them as clues, never assume they're correct, investigate thoroughly before adding anything to your tree. Next, we're going to go on to filtering by smart matches. And here we have a match, Kathy, and it says that Mary's family tree has 6 smart matches with Kathy's tree. So what is a smart match? Well, it's a specialized genealogy technology that matches people that you have defined in your family tree with people in other family trees that members have created on MyHeritage. So this is what it looks like. On the left-hand side are the ancestors in my mum's tree. On the right-hand side, the ancestors in Kathy's tree. And as we can see, this James Cleland has exactly the same dates and places. He's clearly the same person. This is clearly a smart match that is correct. But it doesn't tell me how Kathy is related to the ancestors, only how my mum is. So looking at Kathy, her DNA is managed by Laura, and she appears on a tree with 349 people. So I need to investigate that tree, but the first thing I should do is check if this manager, Laura, has tested and see how she might be related to Kathy, because that could help with working it out. And indeed, there she is on the shared match list, sharing over 1,800 centimorgans with Kathy, which means she's either a niece, a half-sister, or a granddaughter, most likely. Laura is in her 30s, Kathy in her 80s, so granddaughter is most likely, or niece at a push. And then when I look at her tree, despite the 349 people in it, what do we find? She's private and she's a lonely orphan branch. So I'm going to investigate the 349 person tree that Laura has. So click on list view, then straight back to pedigree view, and Laura is the home person and Kathy is her grandmother. And I can immediately see the connection. William Cook Cleland, born 1866, and that goes right back to my 4th great-grandparents, William Cleland and Isabella Crawford. So this is just a bit of a cautionary tale about the smart matches. Take care. So here is a match, Sarah, managed by a male Cowan in a tree of 495 people. Looking at the smart matches, the ancestors are most definitely the same people, John Bruce and Anne Stobo. So quite clearly these smart matches are correct. However, look at the tree. There they are, my ancestors, John Bruce and Anne Stobo, but they are the ancestors of the male Cowan. They are the ancestors of Sarah's husband. So I have a paper trail connection with her husband who has DNA tested. He has the DNA logo, but I don't match him. I match her. So clearly the way I match her is not via John Bruce and Anne Stobo. So just take care with that. And also, smart matches like theory of family relativity can be incorrect, and you sometimes have to reject them. For instance, here, James Laird, born 1799 in Stirlingshire. James Lord, born 1802 in Rochdale, England. Clearly not the same man. So just as with theory of family relativity, never assume smart matches are correct. Investigate them thoroughly before accepting them, as that will add people to your tree and you could end up with mistakes. Now filtering by has shared surname. So I start looking down the list with this filter on and I find this match James, who has a McMurdo in his ancestral surnames. And that piques my interest because it's quite an obscure surname. On my tree, we'll see that James McMurdo and Helen Pettigrew are my McMurdo line. My 4th great-grandparents, in fact. And when we look at the shared ancestral surnames for James, we can see that he has a McMurdo parent and a McMurdo grandparent, and that must be on his maternal side. So looking at his pedigree chart further down the review page, we can see there they are, his maternal grandparents, Archie McMurdo and Kit McInnes. The first thing that I should always do, since I have been building my tree for years and it's big and I'm not going to remember every single person I add to it, is check my own tree for these people. And when I checked for an Archie or Archibald McMurdo in my own tree, I did find one born in 1884, but clearly that's not the one that married this Catherine McInnes at a much later date. So I don't have him on my tree. So I need to investigate it. Could he be descended from this Archibald McMurdo, whose parents were James McMurdo and Isabella Somerville? Well, I'm going to go to the Scottish records. I'm going to get the marriage of Archibald McMurdo and Catherine McInnes from 1942, and I find that his parents were Archibald McMurdo and Nellie Brown. So same thing again, get their marriage from 1911, and his parents were James McMurdo and Isabella Somerville. So my hypothesis is correct. I can go back to that tree and add in this new information, and James is descended from my fourth great-grandparents, James McMurdo and Helen Pettigrew, and he's my fourth cousin once removed. Because I've built out so many of my collateral lines, the match was easy to identify. If you have that large, robust tree, always search it in case your match's ancestors are on it. Use all the work you've already done in the past to help you. And in this case, the new match has enabled me to add 3 new downstream branches to my tree. And another key tip, always add a note whenever you work anything out. Any work you've done, keep copious notes. I'm adding a note here to say that I've worked James out, I've put the most recent common ancestors, etc. And it's worth creating a spreadsheet to keep track of significant matches and notes and anything you work out in regards to common ancestors, as some matches may choose to opt out of DNA matching at some point or delete their kit. Be wary of common surnames, and by that I mean the Smiths and the Joneses and the Hamiltons of this world. So here's a match, shared ancestral surname with Fiona of Hamilton. And when we look at her pedigree chart, we see her maternal grandfather was a David Hamilton. I have Hamiltons. There could be a connection. Equally, her paternal side is Irish, Doran and Brophy. So look at those shared matches again. Scroll down. Oh, there's one, Josephine, sharing over 150 centimorgans with Fiona, 58 centimorgans with my mum. That's a decent match. I want to know who are the common ancestors between Fiona and Josephine. So let's look at Josephine properly. And guess what? In her surnames list, she's got Doran, not Hamilton at all. So they're a red herring. Looking at Josephine, she's descended from a John Doran. So it's the same old thing. Go back to the research, build out the trees. I built Fiona back to a couple named James Doran and Barbara Marshall, her second great-grandparents. And Josephine descends from the same people, James Doran and Barbara Marshall. They're her great-grandparents. So they're second cousins once removed. And the next generation back is David Marshall and Agnes Easton. Now, where have we seen her before? Yep, it's the same one. It's the same Agnes Easton, descended from the same John Borman and Jean Love. And that's my link to them. But if I just scrolled a bit further down that shared match list, I could have spotted that myself, because there's our old friend Rita, who we've looked at before, and she's sharing a nice 52 centimorgans with Fiona. So Rita also descends from Agnes Easton, as we found out earlier. By seeing that, I would have had a good clue that it was the Agnes Easton line I should have been looking at. And all of this led me to some fantastic photographs of Agnes, born in 1812, and her husband, David Marshall. These are the gems that you can add to enhance your family tree from working on your DNA matches. So genetic generations versus age. Okay, so here we have a Mr. Hamilton, and his great-grandparents were Joseph Hamilton and Agnes Rennie, and they were my mum's third great-grandparents, sorry. So you would think that Mr. Hamilton must be a good deal older than my mum, wouldn't you? He's 2 generations closer to the common ancestors. Aha, but he's actually 3 years younger than my mum. 2 generations closer and 3 years younger. So what's going on here then? Well, this pesky guy is going on. He got married for the first time in his teens, and he was still having children with his second wife into his 60s, of which Mr. Hamilton's father was one. And on my mum's side, there were short generations. So that's how that kind of anomaly can occur. It's useful to know the age of your match and try to work out what the relationship might be from that, but always start from the most to the least likely. It's most likely 2 people of a similar age are the same generation, but don't take it for granted. You might find some rare cases like that. And a genetic generation can throw up anomalies due to older fathers. So when you're examining your match's tree, always look for long generations, older fathers, or even just long generations, 40 years or so as opposed to 25 to 30. And that will give you a better idea on what the relationship might be. If you spot any of them, you're going to have to take them into account. Test your older generation relatives. This is really important if it's possible. You'll see this up on the MyHeritage website on the DNA match list. Test additional family members. The more relatives test their DNA, the more you'll discover. And it is so, so true. They simply have more of our ancestors' DNA than we do, our older generation relatives. But even if we don't have older generations to test, if we can test our peers, we're going to get more of our ancestors' DNA via them. So for instance, here's a match on my list, Anne. And she's sharing 25 centimorgans with me with a largest segment of 11. That's not a match I'm going to be looking at really with any gusto. However, when I tested my dad's first cousin, that magic generation closer to our common ancestors, suddenly I'm interested in Anne because she's sharing 123 centimorgans with my dad's first cousin, V. Now, she only has a tree of 1 person, so that's a problem. However, when I look at the shared matches with V, I find Anne's son, J. Marley, on there. And he has a much larger tree of 7 people. But that was enough for me to solve this case because I quickly established that I had his grandmother, Jean Carragher, already on my tree, and he's my 3rd cousin once removed. Just like that, from testing an older relative. How to narrow down your matches. Again, it's all about testing your older generations because they can narrow your matches the furthest. If you don't have older generations to test, then test your peers. Half siblings, first cousins, second cousins. First cousins can narrow to grandparents, second cousins to great grandparents. Full siblings won't narrow your results, but if you don't have parents to test, then always consider testing your full siblings because they will have different bits of DNA from your parents that you didn't inherit. So how does this narrowing work? Well, again, it's back to that key shared match list. There's a match here, Michael, he's the comparison match, and this time it's to me. He's matching my paternal half-sister. So straight away, I know this is a paternal match. He's not matching my mum. He's also matching my paternal second cousin on my dad's maternal side. So I now know that the match is on my paternal grandmother's line. And the pièce de résistance is that he's matching my second cousin once removed. Again, he's that magic generation closer to her common ancestors. So it narrows this match with Michael down to my great grandmother's 8th of my tree. That's the only place I need to look for the match. And that is really, really useful when trying to work out connections. Not all of your cousins will match you. This is something you need to understand. If a first cousin tests or a second cousin tests or anyone closer than a second cousin, the chance of them matching you is 100%. If someone closer than second cousin doesn't match you, then you're in trouble, or second cousin or closer. However, if a third cousin doesn't match you, well, there's a 10% chance they won't. If a fourth cousin doesn't match you, that's perfectly normal. It's about 50-50 as to whether they will, and only about 2% of sixth cousins or more distant will match you. But of course, we all have many thousands more of them than we do first and second cousins. Not all of your matches will be genuine cousins. Another key point, Many small segments are false or known as IBC, identical by chance. Research suggests 100% of segments of 15 centimorgans or larger are real or identical by descent, but only 14% of 5 centimorgan segments are real. So basically, be very, very, very careful with these tiny, tiny segments. It doesn't mean totally discount smaller matches, especially if you found that common surname location, but just be careful with them and don't make them a main focus. We all generally have so many more higher matches to work with anyway. Endogamy. Okay, the dreaded word. It's the practice of marrying within the same ethnic, cultural, social, religious, or tribal groups. In endogamous populations, everyone descends from the same small gene pool, so they're related to each other in multiple ways. You might find the same ancestors on an endogamous tree 5, 6 different times. If you have a lot of endogamy within your tree, you have to disregard predicted relationships and ranges of centimorgans, as distant cousins are just going to share more DNA with you, and the closer relationship prediction will be wrong. If you are third cousins 3 times over, as well as fourth cousins once removed and fifth cousins twice removed, you're just going to share more DNA. Okay, MyHeritage DNA tools. Let's quickly go over them. Now, on the DNA tools screen, there's Chromosome Browser, Auto Clusters, and Ethnicity Maps. Now, I'm going to focus on Chromosome Browsers and Auto Clusters. So let's look quickly at Chromosome Browsers. I'm going to be giving a much longer legacy webinar on this very topic just next week. So this is just a short overview. First of all, we have the one-to-one Chromosome Browser, which you get at the bottom of the Review DNA page. And this is a chromosome browser showing a match between my mum and her first cousin. They share 38 DNA segments with each other because they're close relatives. Now, what it shows us is each of our 22 chromosomes, each of our 22 autosomes. However, remember what I said when we were talking about DNA inheritance, that we have a pair of every chromosome. We have 2 chromosome 1s, 2 chromosome 2s, 2 chromosome 3s, etc. We have a maternal chromosome 1 and a paternal chromosome 1. Yet, on this chromosome browser, we are only seeing one line, and we are seeing all the segments that Isabel, my mum's first cousin, shares with my mum in pink. So my mum is the blank, the grey colour at the back. That's all of her chromosome data. And the pink is Isabel. So what's going on? Why aren't we seeing the pairs? Well, in an ideal world, we would see this for each and every chromosome. But the problem is that the systems cannot differentiate between which of the 2 pairs is paternal and which is maternal. So you have to look at these single lines as an amalgam of your 2 chromosome 1s. And anyone matching you along any part of these chromosomes could be matching you on either one of your copies. So they could be matching you on your maternal chromosome 1 or your paternal chromosome 1. So let's now turn to the one-to-many chromosome browser just to see a bit more about how that works. The one-to-many chromosome browser is you get to via the tools, and you can add up to 7 people. So you can compare yourself with up to 7 people, or you can compare any other test you have on the site with up to 7 people. So here I'm comparing myself with my mum's first cousin Isabel and my dad's first cousin V. Isabel's the red color, V is the yellowy orange color. And here we see that both Isabel and V, if we just zoom into the first 7 chromosomes, they're matching me in some of the same spots, aren't they? However, I know they don't match each other. Isabel and V are on opposite sides of my tree, and they don't share any DNA with each other, yet they're both matching me on the same segments. What that means is the red color Isabel, she's matching me on my maternal chromosome 1 there, and V is matching me on my paternal chromosome 1 at that specific location. And this can be really, really helpful. Let's say I didn't know who V was, and I only knew Isabel, and I only knew Isabel was maternal. Well, this would tell me for sure that V is paternal. Now I'm actually comparing two of my paternal first cousins, so two people on the same side. And this is going to give me something different. Two people on the same side should match me on segments on the same copy, or at least two close relatives should. And they do. MyHeritage automates this process for us in a brilliant way by telling us about the triangulated segments. And that means that these three people all match each other on the same copy of the same chromosome. So either the maternal one or the paternal one. And I have 9 triangulated segments with my 2 paternal first cousins, including this one on chromosome 1, which MyHeritage puts a line around for me. And they also give a table showing you the start and end locations of all of these segments and the number of centimorgans within them and which chromosome they're on. And these triangulated segments, you can also reach them via the shared match list. It's this little icon here on the right-hand side. If you see that icon, you know there's a triangulated segment with that person. It means that the tester, the comparison match, and the shared match are all sharing DNA on the same segment of DNA, on the same copy of the same chromosome. And that means that they really do share a common ancestor. Sometimes people on the shared match list might match each other in a different way to how they match you, not when you see a triangulated segment though. And don't expect all segments to be on the same side. For instance, here we have Tara. I share nearly 40 centimorgans with her, but she only shares 26 with my mum, and she's sharing 12 with my dad's first cousin. So this is a match that's on both sides of my tree. Quickly, autoclusters. Now, there is a full webinar about autoclusters from MyHeritage in the library to watch, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but it is another way of looking at your shared matches, really. It's a great visual tool, and it's an automatic tool that organizes your matches into clusters that likely descend from common ancestors. It was developed by Evert Jan Blom and of Genetic Affairs, and MyHeritage licenses it and has it on the site. It's very easy to work. All you need to do is press generate and it will generate an auto cluster for you. So I've done one for my mum here, and it will send you an email when it's ready with a zip file. And what you want to look at is the HTML file, which will bring up the clusters. Now, it's come up with 26 clusters for my mum, and it's clustered all her matches into groups of shared matches, people who all match each other or who match a majority within that group. The biggest clusters are at the top. So cluster 1 has 10 members, cluster 26 only 3. And when we look at these clusters, there's lots of information there. Like how many of them match each other. So ICW in common with means, for instance, Brian matches with 9 of the others in the cluster. It also gives us information as to whether they have a tree on MyHeritage, and we can even click through to that tree and it tells us how many people are in it, which is fantastic. So if we look at cluster 3, there's Duncan, and I have written a note on Duncan saying he's my paternal 5th cousin. He's on my Colquhoun line. So I can now investigate Beverly, Edward, Kevin, C, and John as possible Colquhoun line relatives. Finally, privacy settings. So if you want to look at your privacy settings, go to My Privacy and then My DNA Preferences. And this is where you can enable or disable DNA matching. And as I say, if people sometimes disappear, they may have disabled their DNA matching. And you can allow matches to view profile details, etc., to see ethnicity estimates. Lots of different things there that you might want to look at. So summing up, use your DNA results in conjunction with traditional research for best results. Create or upload a family tree, no matter how small. Make sure it's properly linked to your DNA. Make cousin connections and work together. Make notes and keep track of all your work. Make use of MyHeritage's tools and features, and just practice. The more you practice, the more you'll understand, the more you'll get to grips with it, the more matches you will uncover, and the more fun it will become. So here is a look at my other webinars in the Legacy Library. I have a number of Texon videos, as well as longer form webinars, including my most recent one about using DNA to solve adoption and unknown parentage mysteries. And these are my contact details, and I'm going to hand back to Jeff at this point, and we can do some Q&A.
Well, wonderful. Thanks so much, Michelle. One of our longtime listeners here, Murray, writes in saying, this is definitely one of the best DNA webinars I have watched. So very good, Michelle, and thanks for showing us about where we can watch more of you. And I've got it here on my screen now, and I'm going to copy this link and put that in your chat area, everyone, so you can go and view that. And she also mentioned that next week she'll be talking in depth about using chromosome browser, segment data, and triangulation. So if that's of interest to you, go and register here, and we'll see you next Wednesday. And there's lots and lots of questions that you've submitted here to my questions panel. We won't get to all of them, but so if you have additional questions here, I'm going to copy this link. I'm going to paste this link into your chat area for all of you. This is the MyHeritage user group. So if you have questions about using the website, or if you have a question that didn't get asked here today, head up there, and that's where you can come and type your question. And there's almost 13,000 other members there that are happy to help you with your questions. Now, our next MyHeritage specific webinar will be in September by Dana Tretman on new historical records available on MyHeritage. So, and I've put this direct link in your chat area as well. Okay, door prize time. If you're here, you're eligible to win. Our first door prize is a 1-year MyHeritage complete plan. Everything that Michelle talked about is included in this complete plan, and with the complete plan, you'll get both the family site subscription and unlimited access to the data subscription, which just gets more and more valuable each month as new records are added. Okay, I'm going to go and find our winner, and if I call your name, just watch for an email from me, and we'll communicate about how to get this. Okay, if your name is Maria Brolin, you're our first winner here today. And our next winner, and I did this again. I forgot to change my slide, but I'm going to give a MyHeritage DNA Test kit. And so for one of you, you'll be very excited about this. If your name is Lee Larkin, you've got a DNA test kit coming your way. I'll just, Lee, if you'll send me your mailing address and phone number, then we'll get that arranged. All right, I think my last slide, here we go, questions time, and let me bring Michelle back on. And thanks, Michelle. By the way, those of you who are asking, you can watch this recording again afterwards, and the place that you'll do it is just go up to familytreewebinars.com, and if you'll later on this afternoon, you'll be able to just scroll down to right here into the new section, and it will show up right here in this first spot. Okay, let's head back over to this slide. So, Michelle, let's see. Lots of good questions in here. The Vicky was just wondering if she doesn't have a paid MyHeritage account, can she use some or any of the features that you've been showing here today?
Some, yes. It depends on whether she has so she has a DNA test at MyHeritage. It depends on whether it is a one that she bought from MyHeritage or uploaded. If she uploaded a kit, then she could unlock some features via that. But there are many features that you can use without the subscription, but it is the basics like your DNA match list, information on the DNA matches. If you want to see more about the trees and the shared matches, and things like that, then you do need to either unlock a kit if you've uploaded it or have a subscription if you've bought it direct from MyHeritage.
Okay. And by the way, while Michelle is very, very knowledgeable about this, she is not one of the MyHeritage developers, so she can't give you the secrets, and wouldn't know the answers to every question about this. But Claudia is wondering about the haplogroup. Is that associated? Is the haplogroup available with an autosomal DNA test?
No. So haplogroups come with Y-DNA and mitochondrial DNA tests. Now, some testing companies do give you haplogroup information with their autosomal test, but MyHeritage does not.
Okay, thank you. Claudia is wondering, is it possible to change the name of the kit if she is the administrator, so the display name shows differently for someone?
Yes, you can do that. You can do that in managed DNA kits if you want to change something about the kit. Another easy way is whoever you have the kit attached to on the tree, if you change the name in the tree, that will change the name on the site as well.
Oh, good. Okay, so from here, I've just got my own site pulled up here. So under the DNA menu, go down and click on Manage DNA Kits, and that's where you'd be able to do that. Is that right?
Yeah, you should be able to in there. I can't 100% remember doing it in there before. I think I probably have, but that would be the place I would expect to do it. So it would be the 3 dots on the right-hand side. So you would reassign kit to a different person. Yes, I have done that before.
Good.
And you can open that up and change the name. But what you really want to be doing when you do that is assigning it to a person in a tree. So that it's attached to the right person in the right tree with their ancestors attached. So, but yes, you can absolutely do that.
Good. Okay, thank you. Laura's wondering, as we're looking at our list of DNA matches, is there a way of identifying which ones I've already looked at? Is that possible? I'm not certain.
So the only way of doing that is to write the notes every time you look at a match. So when we look at the DNA matches, Jeff's bringing up his here, there isn't like a dot or something to say I've looked at this or I haven't, but if you write a note, you will know you've looked at it. So write a note, look at it all in detail. Okay, can I work anything out about this? Okay, I think it's definitely paternal because it matches my paternal second cousin or something. So write that in the note, and then you get this little purple or pink color when you've written a note. And when you scroll down your list, anything with the pink color, as you see, you'll know you've looked at that. It's really the only way at the moment. Okay. I hope at some point we might get something to differentiate between those. And of course, new matches have the tag new next to them as well.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to Sandy, who's asking about the trees that you create. Does Michelle recommend creating multiple trees, like one that's separate for the maternal line and another one for the paternal line, rather than one larger tree?
So I used to before DNA, and now I don't, because I find it easier having everything on the one tree. The thing is, if you've tested your DNA, okay, and you've created a paternal tree, you can only link your DNA to one tree. So if you link your DNA to your paternal tree, you're missing all your maternal ancestors. You're missing half of your DNA. You're missing lots and lots of your DNA matches who are going to connect to your maternal side. And there's no way to connect those two trees up to you. So you have to have a tree with both sides of your ancestry, at least a direct ancestors tree to connect to your DNA. But now I do recommend having one big tree for all of your direct ancestors and your collateral lines, because it's just easier to streamline and keep it all in the same place and much better for linking to DNA results. But when you're creating trees for matches, that's where a lot of people create lots of different trees. And I recommend just one tree It's easy enough, as you've seen during my talk, to create orphan branches. So create an orphan branch on a tree, just create a research tree. You want to turn off the smart matches and all of the different things for your research tree. You just want that to be completely private and not out there in the system. And then start building the trees of your matches on your research tree until you work out who they are. And then you can add them into your main tree.
So Julie says, would you include your husband's tree in your tree as well?
So no, actually, I wouldn't.
Okay.
I wouldn't include. I mean, it depends on if your children are involved. If your children are testing and if they want to share the same tree, then yes, because the same problem will arise if you try to link your child to your tree and they've only got their maternal side. So it depends. If there's no children, if you're not going to link to any children, then it's probably better to keep two people not genetically related, so spouses, or to separate trees, because you can have your husband's or your wife's tree with all of their ancestors on one tree attached to them, and you can have your own tree with all of your ancestors attached to you. But like I say, the problem comes in if your children are testing and they're going to attach to the same tree, then you want to have it all in the one tree.
Okay. Thank you so much. Just time for just a couple more here. Elizabeth is wondering about the theory of family relativity results. Do you know how often those are updated?
I don't. That is one for MyHeritage. Okay. I don't know how often it updates.
All right. I know when I get a new one, it sends me an email.
There was a major update not that long ago with the theory of family relativity, and there was a lot of new ones came in for a lot of people. But I do think that they update with new ones every so often. I just couldn't give you a time scale on it.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, well, I just love seeing the emails that come to me that say, hey, you've got a new theory of family relativity. And on Sundays, I think it's when they send out the emails of when you have new DNA matches.
Yeah.
So Jane says, just to clarify, would Michelle put Odette and Odette's relatives in her tree now as collateral lines to expand it and make more connections easier?
Absolutely. They're already in there. Every time, yes. Good. I would most definitely do that. Once you have worked out a match, you know your common ancestor with that match, get those branches into your tree. Because let's say Odette's first cousin tests or Odette's brother or sister tests, I'm going to quickly know who they are. I'm going to be able to add them in. I've already got their grandparents, great-grandparents, etc. It's all building your tree out, yeah.
Good. Okay. And Julie's saying, if you manage several kits, should you be getting emails about their DNA matches as well?
Yes, you will. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Julie, I know that because in the one email that comes each Sunday, it lists each kit that I manage, and it tells me the new DNA matches from each kit. So,
it's
all
not
in
a
one
separate email, it's an amalgam. Yeah. So you just need to scroll through the email and it will go through your different kits, as Jeff says, and it will tell you the best new matches that you've got for each of those kits. But you won't get a separate email for every single kit unless they're on different accounts.
Yeah, I love it. It's great to have them all there in the one place. Well, good.
Yeah.
So, Michelle, before we say goodbye right now, I mean, we'll see you again next Wednesday, and I'm looking forward to that. But do you have any final parting thoughts for us?
Gosh, I think I've talked myself out.
I think so, too.
Yeah, I mean, my parting thoughts are always the same. Whenever you're starting with DNA testing, think of it as another great record set. It's not a panacea. It's not going to solve everything. It's not going to tell you everything, and it's not going to give you it on a plate. Sometimes you have to do a lot of sugaring around to get to the bottom of something, like we did with Odette. But it's great, and it's so satisfying when you do get there. And it's important to use it in conjunction with the traditional research. There's just no other way to solve your mysteries and your matches. I work on a daily basis on mysteries, on adoptions and unknown parentage especially. And most of the time, I am trying to find connections between shared matches and pulling together a giant jigsaw puzzle. But when I'm working on my own and I have my big, robust tree to work with, it can be a real pleasure to be able to pinpoint these how these matches relate to me, and I'm happy to find new third, fourth, and fifth cousins and get them on my tree.
Well, I love your parting thoughts. Thank you so much, and it is indeed much fun. So thanks to Michelle for being here, and you're welcome here anytime. And thanks to all of you, wherever and whenever you are around the world, for sharing part of your day with us. And remember, life is short. Do genealogy first. Bye, everyone. Bye, Michelle. Thanks again.
Thanks, Jeff.
Uh-huh.